Okay, hello and welcome to Chapter 3. We're going to be working on selections. Let's go ahead and get started. We can do a file open to get our image up, and we want to work on the selections image. You see all kinds of little items on there. Let me open that on into Photoshop. Lots of things in here to select and different ways we have to select them. So let's get started with making selections. We can start at the bottom, start at the top. It really doesn't make any difference. Some of these are going to work better some ways than others. Let me just point you to the Marquee Tool, which is the second one down from the bottom in the Tools palette. If you click and hold that down, you will see that we have more than one thing in here. We want the elliptical marquee tool. So it turns into a circle up there. And what we're going to do is work on this round to it and make a selection of it. A selection is basically, well, it looks like this. That's a selection. Anything inside that circle is the edit area. It means that we can make changes, we can paint, we can cut, we can paste, and all that inside that circle, or that circle, or this circle. It doesn't make any difference. But anything outside that circle, we can't do anything with. It's all dependent on what's inside the selection. Making selections in Photoshop is one of the primo things that we do as digital artists. Bad selections show up and they look really bad. So it's key to make good selections. Now notice this is moving. It is an animation. And whenever you see that, it basically is trying to tell you right here is a selection. These are commonly referred to as marching ants. So I will say that throughout the semester as we work on different things. These would be called the marching ants because it is moving, showing us the area of selection. I'm going to move down here and zoom in on the round to it, and I'm going to do that with my control key held down, my space bar held down, and notice it turns into the magnifying tool, which is right over here in the tools palette. If you'd rather go over here and click on that, it's going to do the same thing. So I'm going to click and drag so I can make that much bigger. What else can we do? Well, we can also use our navigator up here to make things larger and smaller. That's good, right where it is. Okay, click back on the elliptical marquee tool and we're ready to make a selection. So if I click and drag right now to make a selection, because I want to make a good selection around this entire circle, if I click and drag with my left mouse button held down, you see the selection that I have right now. That's not working out too well. Click and drag, try to do better. Click over here and try to get it. That's closer, but still not good enough. So here's what you do. You click and drag, and you hold your mouse down. Then you put your finger on the space bar, hold it down, and with your mouse, you move that back up. Let go of the space bar, and keep your mouse down, and drag it over some more. Space bar, move it, drag it down, space bar again. I'm trying to get that right there. And then the first thing we do is let go with the left mouse button, and it becomes a perfect circle. Now, I just moved my hand just a little bitty bit as I let go of that. So it didn't get this very good down here. So I'm going to do it again. I'm clicking and dragging. Now I'm holding down the space bar with one finger, and you can use all the fingers you want. And space bar again. Let go with the space bar. Space bar to move it, and right there looks perfect. I'll let go, and now we've got a good selection. So now that we have a good selection, what do we do with it? Well, we can actually pick it up and move it if we want to, but I want you to take and create a new layer with this on the layer. Right over here is our layers palette, and all we have to do to create a layer and paste this onto that layer is hold down the Control key or Command key on a Mac and press the letter J as in jump. Now notice over here we have a layer that just has the round to it on it. Okay, so we've created a layer in the layers palette with just the round to it. If we turn that eyeball off, it all goes away. So you see how. So now we're ready to move to our next item. So I need to be able to see them, right? So I can do that very easily by holding down the Control key or Command key on a Mac and hitting the number 0 on your keyboard. And then it will zoom out and show everything that's in our image. Control 0 is, or Command 0 on a Mac, it basically says full screen with my image. So if we do Command or Control minus, it makes things smaller. If we do Command Control plus, it makes things larger. Okay, Control 0 fills the screen with our image. All right, let's go tackle, let's say, the penny over here. So again, I'm going to hold down my Control key, Command key on a Mac, space bar, and click and drag. And now I'm holding down my space bar. And again, we can use our navigator over here, which is really handy. And again, the elliptical marquee tool, click and drag, hold down the space bar, drag, let go of the space bar and drag again, click the space bar, drag till you get it lined up just right. Space bar, moved it down a little bit. Not getting it precise, and you know why? It's not a perfect circle. It's the way this was photographed. So this won't work the best. What will? Well, we have lots of tools. We have a magic wand. We have a quick selection tool. If we click the quick selection tool, it depends on how this works, depends on the size of the brush. You see how big this circle is that I'm moving? Well, that's like a brush size. We can make that smaller or larger with the bracket keys that are located up there just to the right of the letter P on your keyboard. I'm going to use the left bracket key and make this a little smaller. So I'm just clicking. If I hold it down, it's like really fast. Okay, so all I have to do is click and paint, basically, and it paints a selection. Unfortunately, if you're on the wrong layer, it won't work right at all. So right over here is where the coin exists. It doesn't exist here. It's right on this layer here. So now if I click and drag, notice it kind of snaps right to the edges. We just paint it, and that's a pretty good selection of the coin. And right down here we missed a tiny little bit. It learns as you click. Now what if I went too far like that? Well, if you hold down the Alt key on a PC, the Option key on a Macintosh, notice that turns into a minus sign. So now when we click and drag, it takes away from the selection. If it's plus, it adds. If it's on the minus, which is the Option or the Alt key, will do that for us. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do a Control J, And now our penny is also on its own layer. So we've got the penny, and notice up here in the navigation bar, we have the penny and we have the round to it. So let's go back. Let's turn these off. Let's just turn the eyeballs off so that doesn't interfere. Turn the eyeball on for the background. And now we want to do a what? A Control 0, Command 0 on a Mac. Fills the screen. Now we have the quarter. So I'm going to Control spacebar, Command spacebar on a Mac. And I'm going to shove that up. I got it too big. Sometimes it's just easier to use that navigation. Alright, if we use the elliptical marquee tool, I'd say we're going to run into pretty much the same thing we did on the penny. So I'm just going to go ahead and stay with this, and look at that, how quick that is. It wasn't very long ago that Photoshop didn't have a tool like this. So I'm just painting and grabbing all that, and it took a lot longer to make these kinds of selections. I'm going to show you another way of making a good selection around something like this. There is and we're going to turn off the marching ants. We don't need them right now. So we can do that one of two ways. We can go up to select and go to deselect, but you notice right here it shows the keyboard shortcut, Control or Command on a Mac, D. So Control D, and the marching ants go away. Right down here at the bottom of the Tools palette is a square donut. You see a square with a circle in it. If you click that, actually let's double click that, because we want to make sure this is on. It defaults to masked areas. We want it on selected areas. Masked areas doesn't even make sense. When we use this tool, whatever we paint is a selection. If we use it on masked areas, whatever we paint is not the selection, everything else is. So, sound confusing? It is. So let's just click OK. Now, I want you to see that the name of the file has now changed. At the end it says Quick Mask /8. The actual file name didn't change, but right up here in the title bar the information did change. So what this allows us to do is paint with, gotta have a brush on, so let me do a Control D here. It allows us to paint with the paintbrush. Hit the letter B or go over here and click right on the brush tool. We want the very top one. Now that's obviously a small brush, so, or extra, I guess it's extra large brush. So we need something that's much smaller. There we go. Because I want you to see what this paints with. As I paint, it's dependent on the opacity right here, and it's only at 18, so we need to change that all the way to 100. And now when we paint, this is called a ruby lith, used in the old newspaper days. Now, if we use this, it's going to give us an odd selection, and I'll show you just a second what I mean. We just paint with this tool to create selections. Now notice it's sprayed outside the lines because it's hard to control it with this brush. So if I go down here and click on that again, this turns into a selection. It's not a horrible selection, but some of it got outside the quarter. So I'm going to do a Control D again. This time I'm going to just press the letter Q instead of going down here and clicking the round donut. Press the letter Q, watch what happens up here in the title. It changes to Quick Mask. So all we have to do is press Q to get this tool to come up. Now I'm going to change this to hardness 100%. So now when I paint, it's not going to spray over the edges, and I'm going to make this much bigger. What if I made it about the same size that the quarter was? Okay, a little bit bigger, right? It's easier to actually do this. Let me click up here to get rid of that, and I'm going to use the minus key, or actually, I'm sorry, left bracket key to make that smaller. And now you see it's not filling it completely. But if I click once right in here, you see it did a good job. Now I'm going to move it up here, more to the top, now more over to the side, and just keep doing this until it gets completely around. Get it down there. Some more right over here on this other edge. All right, maybe a little bit more right down there. Now if I press Q again, that's a pretty good selection. So I'm going to do a Control J. And now if I turn the background layer off, you'll see the quarter with a good selection is now on its own layer. So now you're seeing a selection tool that a lot of people don't even know about. I'll turn these eyeballs off and just have the main one on. So let's go up to the navigation bar. I'm going to start calling it the nav bar for short. And then if I hold down my space bar, it turns into the hand tool and I can move that around, or obviously I can use the nav bar. Let's go out a little bit more. See, it's not so easy to do the Control 0 from the nav bar, is it? All right. Well, there's a lot of things that we can use the quick mask to select, but I just wanted you to see what that would do. Now, if we go back to the quick selection tool, let's grab this knife. Let's make a selection out of it. So I'm going to hold down the Control, Command on a Mac, space bar, click and drag, and let go right there. I'm holding down the space bar to move it a little bit. Got the quick selection tool on, so I'm just going to paint. Got to be on the right layer. My mistake. All right, now we do it. Click, just paint. Remember, if we go outside the box like that, just hold down the Alt key on a PC, Option key on a Macintosh, and it'll snap right back where it belongs. Like I said a while ago, I didn't really finish my statement, I don't think. As you click and drag this with the plus and minus, it gets smarter and smarter, making better and better selections as it goes in and out. See, we've got just a little bitty bit there. And a lot of times it'll go too far, and then you just hold down that Alt key or Option key on a Mac. Looks like we've got it. Let me zoom out. I'm going to use this. Space bar, hold it down and click and drag. Control J, Command J on a Macintosh, and it puts the knife on its own layer. Looks good, right? Let's turn the knife off. You're going to see after a while why we have all these layers. All right, we have a peeler, and I'm holding down the space key and dragging. Let's go for the scissors. The scissors are a little bit unique. This has a gap, but there are 3 different gaps, actually 4 on the scissors. So here's what we do to make this a little bit quicker and still accurate. I'm going to go to the Marquee Tool, click and hold, because now I want the rectangular marquee. And this works on a little more complicated selections than others. So I'm basically going to click a box, a selection box, around the knife. Make sure all the knife is inside the box and just let go. Now here's where the magic comes in. Come back to the quick selection tool, hold it down, and get the magic wand. With the magic wand held down, we're going to take away from this selection. Remember, we've got to be on the right layer, or this will fall through in a hurry. So we're going to hold down the Alt key, Option key on a Mac, click, and see how that snapped to it. If I hadn't drawn that bounding box or the selection box around this, we would have selected everything in the image. So now I go inside this handle with the Alt key still held down, Option key on a Mac, click again, so that's now cut out. Click down here, click here, and we've pretty well got our selection. Now we've got a little bit of a problem inside here, so I'm going to make that bigger using the space bar held down, move that over, and what I'm going to do is click back to the Marquee Tool, and this time I'm going to hold down the Shift key so I can add to the selection. So I'm just going to click and drag a little bit and see how that just added to the selection. So sometimes you have to use these things in tandem with each other. All right, we're ready for a Control J. So now the scissors are on their own layer. Let's use the nav bar and move around a little bit. I'm going to show you one that's a little bit different. We're going to select this back scratcher in multiple ways as well. We're going to zoom in. I'm holding down the Control key and space bar and clicking. Command space bar on a Mac. Right here is the Lasso Tool. It's also a selection tool, and you see there are some other selection tools under it. Right now we just want the Lasso Tool. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Since these are finer edges, the Lasso Tool can come in very handy. So I'm just going to click. This is totally freehand when you use the Lasso Tool. Click and drag. And it depends on how steady your hand is as to how good a job you do. Now, I crossed the thing without making a selection, so it caused a problem. So I'm just going to hold down my Alt key, Option key on a Mac, and get rid of some of that. Now I went too far on the end of this prong, so what I do is go make a loop that's kind of backwards. Now I let go with the Alt key, and I want to add to this selection, so I'm holding down the Shift key. And let go. Shift key held down again. Go over to here, let go. Shift key held down. If you miss a little bit, just keep the Shift key down. Now I went too far, so I hold down the Alt key, Option key on a Macintosh, and Option key to get rid of some of that. Shift key again to add to the selection. Let go. Again. I'm just going to get sloppy here so you can see me add and take away. So what I do is zoom in a little bit more. Control, spacebar, click. Command, spacebar, click on a Mac. So hold down the Shift key, and I just make little runs at it, so to speak. And you may be thinking I'm switching to the Alt or Option key. And one more little place here. I'm going to cheat a little bit and go up this way. And it's better to cut in a little bit in what you're selecting than get too much, because if you bring the white fringe in with it, it looks terrible. So Control minus to zoom out just a little bit. Shift key held down. Really didn't do myself. If we let go right now, that's going to jump to the other end, just like that. And yes, I realize I didn't do a good job, but we'll fix it. All right, let's go up here and Alt key or Option key on a Mac. And we just kind of go opposite. Shift key held down. Too far. Option key or Alt key on a PC. And that's pretty well got that. Now it's Shift key. Let go. Shift key, get this little bit here. Now we're going to make this smaller, use the nav bar to help you out. Now, what we're going to do is switch over here, click on the magic wand if that's still showing, and get the quick selection tool. And with shift held down, we're going to click and drag. We got that a little bit messed up, so I control Z. And we're just going to, got to be on the right layer. I did it again. Over here in the layers palette, click on the background layer. Now, you don't have to hold down the shift key using this particular tool because it's going to add irregardless. Now let's zoom in a little bit, see what we've got. Make sure we got good edges. So we've lost a little bit around this edge, so just kind of, oh, that's looking good now, isn't it? Yes, it is. So Control J, and now turning the background off, you'll see that we've got it on its own layer. Let's zoom back out and turn the background back on. Zoom back out. Now we have the big old knife up here. We also have some other tools. Right here is the Polygonal Lasso Tool, which is great for getting straight edges. Also underneath that is the Magnetic Lasso Tool. It's great when you have something that has a lot of contrast, and this knife against the white background is definitely contrasty, so this should work exceptionally well. So I'm doing the Command spacebar click, Control spacebar click on a PC, and what I'm going to do is make my brush smaller. Notice that it looks like a brush head. Left bracket key will make that smaller. Just hold the bracket key down and it'll get smaller. Because what we're going to do is basically click and just start painting. And notice it's snapping. I'm not doing anything. It's snapping, and I went too far. I'm going to hit escape and do that again. I need to have all of this in the window. So let me make my window. Let's do a Control or Command 0, and now do it again. So again, I'm just going along the edge with the left mouse key down. I'm not clicking anything. I'm not holding anything. It's dropping these little points all by itself, and I'm just following the contour. I'm not being careful, especially, and it's finding that edge. And then when it gets back to where it started, you see this little icon, you just let go. And we've got a really good selection. So make sure you're on the right layer. Do a Control J. And now we have our knife on its own layer. Now you've seen enough of the tools to make good selections. Let me show you real quick though what this polygonal, some people call it, will do for you. I'm going to Control spacebar click, Command spacebar click on a Mac. Click here and go all the way down here. Click, and I can click as often as I want to with this. I'm just clicking and creating points that you can't even see. This is a fantastic tool to make selections on things with straight edges. Some of this isn't particularly straight, but go all the way down here now. If you make enough points, you can make it curve. When you get back to the beginning, Then you get this icon, and you see we made a really good selection out of just that part. Then we can use the quick selection tool to finish this off. Got to be on the right layer. That's how I lost that selection. And we want to use Alt key right in here, or Option key on a Mac. Gets rid of that. And again, we do a Control J. Now the rock is probably the simplest thing on here to make a selection of. The quick selection tool does a great job because there's so much contrast. If this rock had some dirt around it, or sand or whatever, it makes the job much more difficult. But watch what happens. I'm not on the right layer. It'll be on the background. And we need to do what? Hold down the Alt key or Option key on a Mac. And voila, it's selected. Control J. Go back to the background layer, and now all you have to do is the fork and the bowl. I would do the quick selection tool, I believe, on the bowl, or even the quick mask would be a good one. That's need the brush to do the quick mask. Let me do a Control D. So you can use this. Now on the fork, you have lots of choices, things that you can use to make that selection. You've seen a bunch of tools to make selections with. So dig in and see what you can come up with to do the best job on the fork. The one thing that I failed to mention, imagine that, is, and let me just get rid of that quick mask that's in there. We don't need that anymore. Do a Control D or Command D on a Mac. Remember, I had you create all of those layers over here, and I'm going to click and drag that out so you can see we have lots of layers. Not tons, but if I click that off and turn all these eyeballs on, we have all but the bowl and the fork, right? Guess what? We can move those things around and do whatever we want with them. So let's just say we want the scissors. Well, which one are the scissors? I believe that's it there. Yeah. So we can double click over here in the layer and oh man. There, I think I have the spelling right there. Okay. What about the knife? Where's the knife? Right here, I believe, yes. And we just click there. So what we can do, as long as it's whatever's highlighted is what's going to, we're going to be able to work on or move. So we can see the round to it up here. And let's turn on the move tool, or we can press the letter V. We can move that wherever we want. The scissors, and I'm actually going to do something special with these scissors. I'm going to turn them. To turn something is basically we transform it. So we can do a Control T, Control Tango, Command Tango on a Mac, and notice it turns into a double arrow, and we can just turn it like this. Double click inside of it or hit the return key and we can move it. What if we take that to it and put it in that hole? Well, to do that, we do Control T again and we hold down the Shift key and make that smaller. And a little bit too small. The best way to do this is actually to change the opacity of that to see how big we've got it. And then we can, kind of fine tune that to fit in the hole. But we don't want to spend too much time doing just that. If it gets kind of crazy for you, if it snaps around, you just hold down the control key or command key on a Mac, and then you can make things go just the way you want them. Change that opacity back up, and we're going to say that's just right. So you can notice that when I move the scissors and I need to tie these two together, because if I move the scissors right now, the tuit doesn't come with it. So if I tie these two together, I can do that by also holding down the control key and clicking on that layer. Now they're both highlighted. Right down here is a little chain link that links these two together. So now when I move, it moves in tandem. If I want to undo that, I simply click the link and turn off that layer, and now they're separate again. Control Z to get that go back. The big knife, I can move wherever I want. Notice the big knife just went underneath the scissors. The reason it went underneath the scissors is because the scissors are here and the knife is here. Everything that's on top and the layers, and we'll get into this more later. Layers are on my mind. We'll get into this more soon, but I wanted you to get a little taste of it now. Whatever's on top, which happens to be in this case the tuit, is on top of everything else. The next item is the penny. So if I put the penny over here, it's next underneath the tuit. That's the tuit, the penny. What's next? The quarter. So if I move the quarter, it's going to be under the penny. What's next? The knife. Move the knife, it's under it. So see, it's like a stacking order. If I move that knife to the top of the stacking order, watch what happens. Now the knife is over everything in here. Now, it may be confusing right now, but later on you're going to see how really powerful this is. All right, that wraps it up this time for sure.